If you're in the chat right now and you've got a PS4 or a PS5, any kind of game with achievements, do you think it's weird that you look at the amount of people that have got the achievement for finishing the game, and it's always like between 5 and 10%? Like,
that surprised me when you were playing Worm Online, and there was some achievements that were really early game ones that you can't really avoid doing. So that basically shows X amount of players haven't got to that stage. So it'll be like a 20-minute into the game achievement, 30% of players got this achievement. It's just like, really? You lost 70% of players in the first half an hour?
That's what it is. So when you look at and this is exactly why I think the opening experience is so important. It's simply because of numbers. It's because it's the only part of the game that the majority of players are actually going to experience. When you look at YouTube retention times as well, soon as you start a video, you lose a massive percent of your viewers in the first 10 to 20 seconds. That's it.
Yeah.
It just immediately drops, and then it kind of curves out and it standardizes.
And it doesn't matter who you are. Like, it genuinely doesn't. All analytics that I've seen look the same.
Yeah.
Massive peak, and then just boom.
You need to make a good first impression. You do. Yeah. It matters so much more. Has anyone in the chat ever stopped watching a TV show after 1 or 2 episodes when there's 100 episodes? Have you ever stopped reading a book after, 1 or 2 chapters? Have you ever stopped watching a film after 20 or 30 minutes? Everyone is going, yeah, well, they have. MMOs are no different. MMOs are no different. And every single time I say to an MMO player base, your intro's crap, the response is always, yeah, but it gets good. And
why is it not good now?
No one's going to get to the bit that's good if they have to work. I've said it so many times. Good content should not be a reward for enduring mediocre content. If your good content is at the end, why not just find a way to shift this closer to the start? And I think that dungeons should be a thing from level 1, but that's a different discussion. What do we need to do to keep players? To me, it's a good tutorial. So, Cal, what do you think the most important mechanics are at the end game of an MMORPG, and then how do we introduce those in the tutorial?
I think it really depends on the game, but for example, in RuneScape, the end game content is a combination of everything you've ever learned, including things that should have been taught to you at the beginning, despite the fact that they're not actually part of the game, such as tick manipulation.
Prayer switching should be taught from level 3 or 4. Immediately. Yeah. Prayer switching should be start soon as you start doing any kind of PvE stuff. If I could do one thing in RuneScape, I would design an early game dungeon or raid that has you work with either the Lumbridge, Falador, or Varrock guard to fight through an assault course designed to train the guards, and one of them is taking on a mage guard and a ranger guard at the same time, and you get taught about prayer switching.
World of Warcraft, talking about your dungeon thing, recently me and Daz jumped in because I was we were reworking the player controller for Nightmare World, and I was saying to him, I was like, World of Warcraft has a really good player controller. Like, just test it out, see what you think about it. He tested it, loved it, but I hadn't played the new tutorial until I did with Daz. And at the end of the tutorial, you're working up, building up all these abilities, learning the basics of your class, and you get thrown into a dungeon.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about this is dungeons in WoW are 5-player, right?
Yep.
Me and Daz were in a party together. It threw us in instantly with 3 NPCs.
Yep.
And the tank would purposely do dumb shit, and the game would point out, hey, this tank's doing dumb shit, you're a healer. Although it shouldn't be your job, sort that dumb shit out.
Yeah, that's great. That's what we need.
And they've needed this for years.
Yeah.
They really have.
Because people in the chat are saying right now, a lot of people have dungeon anxiety, or they have raid anxiety. Imagine you've never done a dungeon, never done a raid, you log in for the first time, you're thrown in with 10, 20 other people who know it really well.
They're all screeching at you.
Yeah, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing the mechanics? And you're like, because
what? Get out the fire!
Yeah, I don't know the mechanics. I don't know what it is. Why can't we train to learn this and train to do this? There is a thin line between, spot on, there's a thin line between having your hand held and being put in a position where you are encouraged to do the right thing. And people always say to me, oh, you want your hand held all the time. No, I don't. I want to play through a situation where I am encouraged and helped to do the right thing, but not forced to do it. You know how when you play mobile games sometimes, they black out the entire screen apart from the bit that you need to click?
I had this literally the other week. I made the mistake of downloading, what was it, the Armies of Gondor or whatever it's called, the Lord of the Rings mobile game.
Oh, the One Ring power. I played a thing on that. It's
Fuck
bad.
me. Literally, exactly what you've just said. The first hour of me playing that game was just click this button. Okay, now drag this button to this other button.
And did they ever
you can't
explain
do anything else.
Did they ever explain why you were clicking the button?
No.
I was a teacher for a long time, and I'll tell you what, if you want to explain something to someone, instead of teaching them what to do, teach them why they're doing it.
And they'll do it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teach them why. And when people say, hey, I've got another idea, okay, say, cool, let's give it a go. Let's see if your other idea works, and then let's work out why it does or doesn't work. You need to teach people the context and the reason behind their actions, not just the action themselves. Here's a great idea.
That was a perfect example in the Lord of the Rings game. Pick your commander's first trait, and then it says, this one is advised for being for beginner players.
Yeah.
You can only press that one.
Yeah.
There's 6 traits you can pick, but you can only press that one. And it's like, you're not letting me pick.
And it's also why. Why even this? You played the old Call of Duty games, Cal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it was either Modern Warfare or Modern Warfare 2. The first actual mission in the game is you are jumping onto a boat in order to go and rescue some terrorists, rescue some hostages, or free someone or something like that. But the tutorial mission is a mock-up of the boat. And it's built in like a plywood kind of warehouse. And you've got the guy outside saying, right, we're going to go in. We've got the boat interior kind of roughly modelled. So we're going to train you for this. And then you go through it, but halfway through the real version, something goes wrong and suddenly you can't follow the route that you'd planned. But that's okay, because you've been taught how to weapon switch and why it's important. You'd been taught how to duck and why it's important, how to move and why it's important. You'd been given all the skills and then put into place to use them, and then said, right, how about using the skills in a way you aren't prepared for? Off you go. That, I thought, was great, because I felt like I had all the skills I needed to succeed. How could we do that in an MMORPG?
That's a tough one, because I think a lot of MMOs do decent tutorials, but then when they add new features, update it, add this new thing, they don't update the tutorial.
No, they don't.
A good example of this is RuneScape actually did pretty well with this in the later old school RuneScape, before it was called old school, you know, the original RuneScape. They'd update the tutorial with every new mechanic, every new thing they added, every new thing that was kind of a bug, but they adapted and allowed it to stay, and they kind of like leaned on it as a feature. They updated their tutorial for all of these things every couple of every 6 months, a year, or whatever. And although people got angry that, my nostalgic tutorial's gone, the new one told you everything you needed to know.
Yeah, the new one was good.
And that's what games need to do.
I think, and this was a Dungeons and Dragons thing that I used to do for new players. So if I was DMing for new players, I would have my new players join the Adventurers Guild, and the Adventurers Guild was holding like an open day, and they were going through a training simulation. So you'd have the Adventurers Guild fighter come out, and they'd do a safe fight, and then they'd have the magician come out, and they'd do safe magic, and they'd have like an escape the room game and find safe. And then as they go through it, the floor collapses underneath them and they fall into an underground cave system, which is not part of the Adventurers Guild anymore, and now they have to legitimately escape where the danger is actually real. But the situations they're about to encounter, they've just been prepared for. So yes, it's dangerous, but they know what to do. Training and their actual experience. I'm a big fan of hiding the tutorials within the games. Cal, have you played Portal?
I was just going to say Portal. Portal is the best example of a non-tutorial tutorial.
Everyone in the chat, who's played Portal? Okay, let me explain why it's good. At the start of the game, do you have access to the portal gun? Nope. But what's the first thing you do? It says the portal will open in 3, 2, 1, and then you see a blue portal. And through that blue portal, what do you see?
I think it's the portal gun, isn't it?
You see yourself. It's not the gun yet.
Oh, yeah, it's because it's in the room, isn't it? That starting room.
What you have immediately done visually is straight away tell the player how this works physically.
Yeah.
You walk through the blue portal and you see yourself. And you're like, right, I get it. These 2 points are connected. Even if you know nothing else, you know the points are connected, purely visually. And then as you go through Portal, you don't even get the gun for a while. You just have to work out how the portals connect. And when you get the gun, you can't fire both colours, only fire one. Which means you're taught how to play the game when you've got one fixed point and you're in control of 1 point.
Remove as many variables from the player and slowly add them back in.
Correct. And then as soon as you get 2 points, then the game begins. What I think MMORPGs do wrong is the end game is fun because you have access and control over all the variables the game can design. And the game is just like 50 to 100 hours of getting to that point. But there seems to be, the start of the game, you get a couple of variables. The middle of the game is just a massive slog. And the end of the game, a load more variables. And Final Fantasy XIV is not innocent in this.
No.
It's probably one of the worst offenders for it, to be honest.
I did play through to max level once, and you are correct. It's just as bad.
FF14 is like, okay, now slowly, 100 hours later, here's fuck tons of abilities.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Final Fantasy XIV. Maybe you could... I honestly think that if you can't get the player... Someone in the chat's like, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Heal. 1, 2. That's how you play FF14.
Yeah.
If you're in the chat right now, who thought that White Orchard, the start of The Witcher 3, was just a part of the game? All White Orchard is a massive hidden tutorial. Hidden tutorials are giving the player the skills they need to succeed without specifically telling them this is a tutorial.